So we are privileged to have James J. Gormley, who is an award-winning journalist, editor, and consumer advocate with 20 years of experience in health and the natural products field. His articles have appeared in consumer magazines and scientific journals, focusing attention on issues such as the National School Lunch Program, food irradiation, GMO labeling, biodiversity, and sustainable agriculture. He has been instrumental in managing consumer health magazines, analyzing national and international regulatory efforts, and handling global scientific and trade relations. Big jobs, big jobs. James is also the author of 6 books, including his newest release, Health at Gunpoint. And we are going to turn to James. Good morning and welcome to the America Meditating Show. How are you?
Thank you so much. My pleasure to be on, Sister Jenna.
Wow, you've got some big things on your plate. You're really changing the world. Wow.
Well, there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm just, one person involved who's trying to get the word out.
I've often known, and you know more than perhaps I, the voice of the minority has always shifted the consciousness of history.
Good point.
Yeah. So now what are some of the factors that contribute to the renewed concerns about food safety? Can you share that with us?
Sure. Well, in many ways, the world is more food insecure now than it perhaps ever was. With all of the abundance of foodstuffs, crops, and, silos bursting with GMO corn and soy and grain, conversely, we have a world that's rife with food contamination problems, dirty water, insufficient water for the world's population, and regulatory mechanisms such as the FDA, for example, and other bodies, which are influenced more by politics and economics of big business than they are about focusing on protecting individual consumers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was in Kauai last year, and I was quite surprised to see so much of Monsanto's fields on this beautiful island and having the seeds being shipped all over the world from that one little place. And it amazes me in one sense. I'm not very educated on some of the current issues on GMO, and I often turn the conversation in a talk that I gave there on GMO labeling and GMO seedings and so on, was that maybe there is a need for us to understand why this modification has happened, and is it due to the increase of population? Is it because we don't have enough food that we needed to even go the route of GMO? Can you educate us on that?
Sure. No, it's the big argument, or I should say the false argument, that GMO manufacturers have used, and many times in conjunction with governments. The argument has been that, we need GMOs to feed the world because, we have a burgeoning world population. It's growing, especially in the developing nations. So we need this cheap, very efficient technology to produce these perverted crops in order to keep up with the world's growth. But it's a false premise, because using traditional plant hybridization techniques and just growing plants in either in responsible ways, sustainable ways, and in some cases organic ways, if that's possible, we have more than enough food to feed the world. The problems relating to feeding the world stem more from not having access, the food organizations not having access due to governments, dictatorships, and what have you, in order to gain access to be able to help feed the world's population. In fact, the fact that we have GMOs, monoculture GMOs, which are very fragile and could be wiped out, huge portions of the world's crops could be wiped out with a single disease. That's one of the problems with GMOs. So we're much more, as I said earlier, food unstable and much more in danger of having a world food catastrophe thanks to GMOs.
How did we get here, James? Do you have any idea? How did we allow that system to just flow through us without us being aware of it?
It's a very good question. Certainly mankind has been cultivating crops since 8000 BC.
Right.
So, we've been doing it for a while, but unfortunately, and I'd say up until approximately 100 years ago, we were doing it in the right way, if not in an equitable way necessarily, but we were doing it in a right way, using traditional techniques, using seed saving, growing heirloom land-raised crops. 100 years ago, there were approximately 30,000 varieties of rice in India. And today, more than 75% of the rice in production in India comes from less than 10 varieties.
Wow.
So we're dealing with extinction, mass extinction of the world's biodiversity.
Wow, an extinction of our farmers as well, because so many have invested in GMO seedlings and lost so much of their livelihood as a result of no production of these seeds. Am I correct?
That is correct. And on top of the problems with monoculture agriculture and specialization, where you're bound to that crop, and if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't go, then too bad for the farmer. And but aside from that, these same farmers are being sued by the main corporation involved. There are approximately 112 lawsuits that the Center for Food Safety has tracked against small farmers for having had the audacity, if you will, I think, and I put that in quotes, to save seeds so they can more easily cultivate for the next year's crop. But that company is suing farmers around the world, small family farmers, for having done what farmers have done for thousands of years.
This whole notion of human greed, over the human need, has become the story of our world. There's just, I think we've reached a point in our lives that the understanding and the value of the human spirit and the human potential, perhaps, I don't know, some people might think it only belongs to a few and not to others. And I don't know, it's unfolding for me as well to try to understand why we reach a point where we feel we can live without a particular group of people. It's kind of like a Holocaust. Mm-hmm. Where you really are saying, we don't need you. We really don't need you in the narrative anymore. We're going in this direction. And I think if we don't offer more knowledge and more education on these areas, I'm not quite sure where it's going to take us, because we've got a future generation of kids coming who are just going to be fed GMO food.
That's correct. Yeah, it's very disturbing. When I was at the Codex Alimentarius, which is the United Nations FAO WHO, sort of a body underneath that dealing with food safety and trade, called Codex Alimentarius. And I was in Rome in 2005. I was attached to the U.S. delegation. And, actually was in Paris right just before that, actually, when this came up. And one of the things that I got up and talked about was ethical principles, because there was a motion that the Codex should adopt ethical principles around the world for the work that it does. And very few countries were willing to adopt ethical principles for the main food and health organization in the United States. In the world. And so I think that was a perfect example, although I was glad I had a chance to at least raise the question. I think that's a perfect example of how far we have strayed as a body of world peoples. We have strayed pretty far from core values and core principles that should be something that is common sense, but it's not, unfortunately.
Right. I want to ask you a personal question. How did that make you feel? Because being in a field in which I'm an instrument to guide souls to personal empowerment, and there's some folks that you'll just come across and they've got so much potential, and you see them going in the wrong direction, or in another direction. And as an instrument, I sometimes feel a lot of empathy. However, it is balanced by the fact that I know we all come with our predestined roles to play, and that somehow pacifies my sometimes extra concerns about the well-being of someone. In terms of you, how does that make you feel when you are so knowledgeable about this particular area and you look at leaders who have the power to make a difference, totally miss the call or are totally focused on something else which has not very fruitful results?
It's a very good question. I think for me, certainly those times are frustrating because you see a direction that could be taken or a decision that could easily be adopted to be helpful for what the world is trying to do, the various governments around the world, and they don't go down that particular path. But for me, what keeps me going, in a sense, is, over the years, I've had a chance to, I've been involved with different magazines and, as a editor and what have you, and I've received letters from readers over the years. And there was this one letter that I received from a reader, Kansas, and many years ago, and when I was editor of Better Nutrition magazine, and he sent in a letter. It was in regards to an editorial I had written called "Never Stop Dreaming." And it was just this sort of epiphany that I had when I was walking around my neighborhood in the Bronx in New York, and I wanted to share that with the readers. It didn't really have anything to do with nutrition or health directly, but it was something that I wanted to share. And he sent me a note saying that he keeps the copy of the editorial up next to his computer, that whenever he feels down, he has a chance to see that. So it's things like that. Individual people who, I've had a chance to, our paths have had a chance to cross in a positive way. Those are the things that keep me excited or keep me involved in trying to be committed the best way I can.
Fantastic. Tell us about your new book. That's an interesting topic.
Yes, the cover is very interesting too. So it's called Health at Gunpoint: The FDA's Silent War Against Health Freedom. And although it sounds as if it's a conspiracy theory book, it's definitely not. And it goes into a whole variety of different areas. A lot of focus on the FDA in the United States, some of the troubling decisions it's made and efforts it has undertaken to suppress health freedom in the United States and health information. But it also goes into a whole variety of other areas, including the food supply, including globalization, and that's a little summary there.
Incredible. We're coming to a close of our show, and I would love to find out perhaps what is your favorite life quote that you find yourself living by, and any suggestions that you would offer to help others live a healthier life in the 21st century.
Well, I don't want to cannibalize my own quotes, but it's just because I had mentioned it, it's top of mind. So I would say, never stop dreaming of moonbeams and fairy dust. A happier life and a better world.
Nice. Suggestions to help us live a healthier life.
I would say get tuned into the credible health organizations around the world that provide good, well-researched information about how we can be our own health advocates. And there are a variety of different organizations, including Citizens for Health, the Alliance for Natural Health, the National Health Federation. There are a number of good organizations out there. I would say visit their websites, sign up for their newsletters, and become, more informed and more involved. And that way, we'll have a chance to really take charge of our freedom and our health freedoms.
That's beautiful. I'm always reminded of this quote: "As is the food, so will be the state of your mind." So With that being said, let's live a much, much healthier life, and it's in our hands to do that. Could you let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you? And thank you so much for being with us, James. It was very, and it's an important topic.
No, thank you so much for the privilege of being on your program. Yeah, people, they could go to Amazon and just search health at Gunpoint, and it's an easy way to find it out there.
Oh, lovely. All right, James, keep up the good work, and thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Sister Jenna.
Take care. So, folks, we have the ability to choose what we wish to put in our body, and just even talking to James, when he was talking about the soya and these things, like we have a lot of, tofu in our diet, and I'm just really now feeling I just either want to reduce that or stop. Just want to stop and really go on more greens and healthy eating, because once the soul is in the body, it must enjoy life, fairy dust, just enjoy the life. So if I'm not paying attention to the needs of the body, then how is the soul going to enjoy being in the body? So with that being said, let us really look into a healthier body. And please contact James or look out for his book, Health at Gunpoint. And I'm wishing all of the listeners today lots of health, lots of happiness. And again, we're going to keep sending these wishes that our government will open up and everything will increase, not go back to normal, but everything will increase and become better for our nation. I'm signing out, wishing everyone a lot of happiness, and remember, no one can steal your happiness unless you give it up.